encouragement. Thank you, Jason.
Sure. Okay, we are broadcasting. Ted or Sean, do you want a bottle of water or anything?
I have a can in the fridge.
Water sounds great. Thanks, Jason. How about water here? How did you mean? Still good?
Oh, yeah.
Don't walk backwards. That's what the doc told me, not to walk backwards or things like that. Thank you very much. And I learned out, I learned why.
You know, it's funny because in physical therapy, they had me on a treadmill walking backwards.
You can do that with like careful.
Yeah.
It takes a minute for it to warm up.
Well, I was hoping for an answer, but it didn't come through. Yeah.
So you had that same approach.
Oh, yeah.
Huh? We must have the same.
Are you?
Yeah.
Well, two leading guys today.
Two left. Yeah.
No, you're going to finish it.
Hey, Sean,
Yeah.
just for the whole COVID thing, I would recommend people stay at their seats.
Okay.
Can they comment?
Okay. Do we have a mic up anywhere or not? No.
We do. It's up to you if you want to.
Well, let's do this. Assuming there's not that many people, we can hear them. If not, we'll just pass it.
Absolutely.
Speak close to your speaker.
I like the version. Does that get picked up on
Yeah. Yeah, the sound is not too bad. Now, the aperture of the camera only picks up to about here.
Okay.
So it doesn't get everybody, but, you know.
Okay, so right where Dave is in that
Yep.
chair, that's good there. Sure, probably not.
I don't know what that just comes up, that's random.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, that's the MSN or
Yeah.
the Western another one. Margie's full beans, by the way.
What's that?
Margie's full beans.
Yeah. Yeah, you saw my response to we're going to be fine. We still have to respond to it. It's a legal complaint. Probably. But we're good.
Considering that,
We got to, because we're being paid for this broadcasting, we'll discuss it later on. The solicitors have it already. So I pulled up a couple of articles on the aqua sewer rates. And the one that I was looking at, so Limerick Township, which is in Montgomery County, is the one that's going to $73. So it's a couple different places around. They're not in Chester County. So this chart is Chester County, so they're not on it. But they're going to be $73.
There's actually fire points on the backside. You'll see.
So, you know, in our rate increase, we'll put us, we're at $5 a month. So it would put it to $40 a month with a $5 increase. So we still significantly below where they're going to be.
Right, and the average rating is for aqua customers, 33%.
For wastewater.
For wastewater.
Yeah.
It was 30% now. In 2019.
Yeah.
So they're pretty steady.
Okay, that's on the side street.
Did you mention the Woody Village get together next week sometime?
No, not yet. I mean, let me just check in and welcome to it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We're going to have an executive session on public works.
Okay.
Salary thing.
Okay.
not all together, but I think Robin's been out, so just need to bring her up to speed, make sure she's good to move it forward. Maybe with you and Doreen, Casey.
Here's the real street shape.
Oh, I like that.
Great pictures from.
Where was that taken? Close to us.
Take my over.
Good night. Was it, yeah, sure.
Probably when they carried away for bridge. Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. No, not a problem.
Expenses goes
Man, that Wawa down the street is like a nightmare at this time. Oh, is it? Am I supposed to be up there next to you?
You can send me a phone call. You got the second one.
Yeah, you want to talk to me out?
Yeah, sure.
If I know you want me to send in the count, now go to Thursday.
Yeah, I'm gonna check with the Mary Ann 1/3.
Okay.
I
Should recognize you through
That's
mascot.
fine.
We both look like the Lone Ranger.
Huh?
We look like the Lone Ranger.
Yeah, exactly. Just tell me who wants to.
Okay.
So we might get some more than that.
Oh, wait, wait one second. Okay.
Around 5:30, something like that. Yeah, something. Yeah.
I was thinking just.
Yeah, I got some balloons from Nancy Mills from Democratic Flowers or something. And they had raised it. Right now.
I could bring some plates to.
I don't know if there's anything else you have. Hey, what? Anyway, how about if I give you a call maybe tomorrow, and we can just kind of do the. But I think we're pretty.
You were right on purpose.
Get your third speechway.
Yeah.
Sir, you need to have a mask on?
Oh, we had a. Do you have any extras?
Yep.
How you doing?
Good, how are you? We've always kept Yeah, that's cool.
And then he,
Yeah.
Metropolitan,
How old is it?
a little 8. And this is the Township.
Tell you what, it is. Did it need this thing to help? This was my head. It's pretty cool.
Well, I got a relative in the
Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Just want to bring it in, check.
So can I use this tonight? I don't like how it's going.
As long as it's not on me.
Can I volunteers get into this?
Oh, my God. Well, they don't carry guns. You know. Just let me give the,
Looks like you've got some use.
Oh, yeah, it sure does.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
People like that, when they were younger.
Sure. You know, all the Irish guys, you know.
Pictures of my
Yeah.
he went to, I think, the Naval Academy. Air Force.
Yeah.
Is there one?
It's either Portsmouth or Plymouth.
Plymouth, that might be Plymouth. He was on the HMS Hood 3 months before he got off. And then he was worse. He really loved it.
He did.
He retired as an admiral.
Yeah.
Very
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for bringing that in. That's really cool.
I thought you'd like
Yeah, I like the little memory.
Yeah.
No, I
Okay.
this off.
Oh, yeah. When did this start?
Well, we're not transitioning in the entire state, so maybe, 2, 3.
No.
Do you know, we don't have a water advisory in effect for our township, do we? I was getting those texts, East Goshen and other townships, like boil water.
Yeah, so they did get one of those in East Goshen.
Yeah, but we
We
don't
didn't
have
get
that
one
here.
here. I think we had a, because I got a similar text, but I don't think that looks in effect anymore. I think they were telling us to keep our ad for changes of color, but I don't know. Haven't heard anything else.
The water advisory got was for conservation, because they had to shut down the Pickering.
Right, I saw that part, like the other part, the boiling water part, or all that.
Yeah,
I wanted to make
not
sure
of
we
West-
didn't have that.
West Coast. I think they sent it to East Goshen in error, and they had to correct that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's Charlestown and Wetland and those areas.
Yeah.
Are they still having the boiler water, you know?
I don't know, I haven't seen it,
I haven't heard it.
lifted. I know they got the second pin back in the running, but it's usually a few days, it's not, that's the problem. It's not instantaneous.
Casey, I have 6 o'clock. Ready? Still ready? Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our September the 7th West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors meeting. Tonight is a joint meeting with the West Goshen Sewer Authority. I'm going to introduce the agenda and them in a minute, but if you wouldn't mind standing and joining me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please note that because Chester County is currently still in an area of substantial transmission for COVID, we are requiring all attendees to wear a mask while seated or moving around. When wishing to make a comment or ask a question, please raise your hand to gain my attention or a member of the board, and you may remove your mask to speak if you wish. We're going to have you speak where you are. There's no microphone tonight. If we can't hear you, we may ask you to come forward, but hopefully with this room we'll be able to hear everyone who wants to make a comment. Also, please be aware that the meeting is being live streamed on the Township YouTube channel, and the meeting may also be audio or video recorded by people present in the room. So as I said, it's a joint meeting this evening. With us board tonight is the Sewer Authority board members, most of them anyway. I would like to welcome them to the meeting. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves one by one, that'll be fine. Just your name and your role.
I'm Walt Wills. I'm the treasurer of the West Goshen Sewer Authority.
Tina Marie Smith, Vice Chair of the West Goshen Sewer Authority.
Ted Murphy, Chair of the West Goshen Sewer Authority.
Yeah, Phil Corbo is not with us tonight, and full disclosure, I am also on the Sewer Authority. I'm the Secretariat member of the authority. So what we have tonight is a status review of the current West Goshen Sewer Authority 5-year capital investment program, a discussion on the 10-year capital improvement plan for 2022 through 2031. There are 3 goals really from the presentation. First is to provide an overview to the Board of Supervisors and the public in attendance of the investments that have been made by the authority and the partner municipalities in the West Goshen sewer system over the last 5 years. The second goal is to describe the forward-looking 10-year capital improvement plan for continued investment in the system to address deteriorating assets that still need to be fixed and to mitigate risks of service disruption and possible environmental consequences. The third goal of the presentation is to advise the board of the funding requirements to support this 10-year investment program and provide a recommendation for potential short-term funding. This is a listening, learning, debating workshop, so obviously we'll have opportunity for everyone to make a comment or ask questions. The board is not taking any votes tonight on any specific action. My suggestion in terms of the process is that while we go through the slides, if you have a clarification question about the slide or some data or information, to ask it when the slide is presented. If it's really a question that's more general in nature, a comment, or something that's about an overall discussion, if you could hold it till the end, because then we're going to have a kind of full board Q&A discussion with the authority, plenty of opportunity to ask more general questions. So as we go through the slides, let's just focus on something that's needed clarification if you have a question. So with that, I was normally going to hand it over to Mike Moffat, who unfortunately is not with us tonight. So Ted or Dave, I'm not quite sure what the process is you want to use to go through the slides.
Casey and I were going to kind of go through them.
Okay. Okay, let's kick it off. So we have about, what, 50 slides in total?
We have 41 in this set. So,
okay, so
a lot of them are just very general overview. Some have some pretty big detail, but we'll get through them in due time.
That's back on the old original Headworks, which was the main building that was dedicated in 1962. So it's been in service since then. That's a display of a typical collection system. You see all the way on the left is the users. Goes through the collection system to a pump station. We have 10 in the system. We're going to have 11 soon. It goes from the pump station down to the plant for treatment, and then it goes out to Goose Creek. The purpose of the projects are regulatory compliance, deteriorating infrastructure, employee life, health, safety, and sustained level of service to the customer.
Right, so West Goshen Township Authority and the township are under DEP, Department of Environmental Protection for Pennsylvania, and also the U.S. Environmental Protection mandates for various components that we send into Goose Creek. So our main goal is to meet our permit on an annual basis, but it's not just an annual basis. It's every day our effluent is checked for all the pollutants that go into Goose Creek, and we have to maintain those levels or less that get transmitted into Goose Creek.
Who checks that?
We have an on-staff lab person that's there 7 days a week. Not the same person, but we have a 5-day-a-week person, and we have 2 lab technicians on the weekends. But we have to check it 7 days a week and submit those reports to DEP. And also submit any irregularities. Obviously, with the 8 inches of rain here we had last week, I don't know, Mike's not here. We probably treated 13 or 15 million gallons of effluent.
We were running 8 million a day.
And we typically run 8 million a day because of all the rain.
We ran 8 million. We typically run 4 million a change.
Okay, there you go. So we were double our typical effluent because of this. So next section is accomplishments and investments, capital investments to date.
Significant work completed since 2016 with the first phasing. Structural repair of the primary clarifier at the plant, one of the primary clarifiers at the plant. We replaced the generator that was original to the plant. Headworks improvements with screening and grid systems. Electrical. We replaced the digesters. Rehabbed the entire building, 2 new digesters. Enhanced chemical addition system was put in place to help with COMAG. We replaced an existing blower with a high efficiency variable blower, so we use less power because the old blowers were either high or low. Now we can dial it in real fine and obviously use less power. COMAG is being installed. It should go online in the next few weeks. And the new screw presses will go in within the next 2 weeks or so. They'll go online.
And we have photos of most of these improvements coming up as well.
This is just a continuation for collection system. We've repaired or replaced over 12,000 lineal feet of main. We've replaced 3 manholes. We've rehabbed 96 with cured in place lining. We installed a new force main at Trinity Drive Pump Station. At 7 of the 10 pump stations, we've put in bypass pump connections. The others will get done as those stations get rehabbed. And we've upgraded 2 stations, Trinity and Woodcrest are down there.
What was the average age of all these lines that you're upgrading?
Most of those lines were original 1960s.
And we do have multiple photos of before and after. So what you see here is Lincoln Avenue.
Yeah, that's an 8-inch terracotta line.
Right.
To the left is before, to the right is after as well.
Right.
You can see the roots in, so it's getting roots, it's getting I&I. That's a picture of more recent PVC pipe installed in the residential neighborhood off of Knollwood. That was actually collapsed. We were still getting flow through it, but it was oblong instead of a round pipe. That's a 30-inch gravity sewer line just north of the sewer plant. The picture to the left is the original manhole that was being replaced. You can see we replaced, we lined, we put new pipe in and we lined the entire run.
And due to gases that are in the sewer,
Hydrogen
hydrogen sulfide, I recall this one specifically, the concrete becomes so brittle that you can stick your finger through it like it's paper mache. So that's a 50-year-old manhole most likely, and you can see how large that whole facility is because you see the worker inside the manhole.
They're 30-inch pipes. That particular manhole is just downstream from a force main discharge. That's Woodcrest pump station, before and after.
So you can see the original condition on the left, not very safe for our employees, and on the right is a modern facility that's has a battery, a generator backup. So that means we do not have to pull in a portable generator, which we have to pull in a sizable portable generator to operate the pump station. So we have no downtime issues, and also the pump station itself is now up to speed with life safety issues for our employees who have to actually go down into the station itself.
That's Trinity Drive Station before and after.
And again, you can see the same kind of deteriorated look. It's not safe. And then the upgraded facility to the right with upgraded safety fencing, the backup generator. And
Signless generator, there's a house.
Right.
There's a house about 50 feet to the right of that station.
If I could just add in, one of the things that you can't see here is that there's significant space underneath that concrete cover. There's entire rooms down there. Some of these pump stations will go down 30, 40 feet. So there's a lot of mechanicals in there. So what you see here is just the tip of the iceberg from what's below. Thank you.
That's a great point. And here you have, the Headworks is a building that's at the plant. That's where the actual effluent comes into the sewer plant down on Concord Road. It was original to 1960-ish, or 1960 just about. So what you can see is on the left, there was originally what's called a fine screen, which it pulls out small particulate out of the wastewater, so it doesn't get into the pumps and wreck the pumps. The grip blower was original. You can see the age on that. And you can see the new to the right, the new fine screens system that was installed, much more efficient and much better suited to collect material before it gets into the pumps and everything else and wrecks them. And then we have the Vortex grid system to the right. That is, again, a new installation of the Headworks that, again, pulls out all those materials that can get into our pumps and ruin the pumps and deteriorate their life expectancy.
That's the generator replacement at the sewer plant. That was original to the plant. It was in very poor running condition. So it got upgraded. And the small gray box you see at the new generator installed is a docking station. We've installed those at most places. The plant has a docking station in all the critical buildings. Mm-hmm. So if we were to get a short and lose power between one of the motor storage control cabinets in another building, we can actually power each individual building, should we need to. Or with that box there, we could actually bring a portable generator in and power the plant if those two generators were down for some reason.
And again, these emergency backup generators are critical to our operations at the plant. It's about 15 minutes without power before wastewater starts backing up into the system, which could lead to overflows, which then lead to reports by us to DEP that we had an overflow and possible environmental damage. So to have these emergency generators is critical to maintaining operations during storm events and during emergencies.
And they all function with an automatic transfer.
Automatically.
So you don't have to have somebody on site that actually pull the switch.
Correct.
You lose power from Pico, senses it,
It
automatically turns it on and transfers.
Yeah, 3 o'clock in the morning to 2 p.m. on a Saturday, absolutely.
Casey, I just wanted to add that these
Yep.
tanks on the left, which were underground storage tanks, were replaced with above ground storage
Yep.
tanks. So your regulatory requirements are a lot less because you can actually see visually the tanks above ground. The regulatory standards for underground storage tanks are a lot more costly and stringent as a result of, because they're underground and you can't really see what's going on. So that was a good move to put them above ground, a lot safer from an environmental standpoint.
Yeah, the fuel tanks are actually the black bases on the
Right. And again, these generators are extremely quiet for the power they produce. The old generator on the left was
no muffler.
no muffler on it, deafening, and we have neighbors just behind the tree line back there. So when that generator would kick on, it would wake up the entire neighborhood, and now they don't.
Chemical addition system, that was actually grant funded, and it helps with the phosphorus. It'll really come into play once the Kodak gets fully online.
Yeah, all sewer plants across the country are under EPA mandates to reduce phosphorus that goes into the effluent. And this authority board has entered into an agreement with EPA back 5 or 6 years ago now. It's been a while.
2018.
To meet specific phosphorus requirements. So the authority has authorized the engineer to create and install factory available processes to reduce phosphorus in the effluent.
That's a picture of the anaerobic digester replacement. Picture to the left was the condition of one of the old tanks. The picture on the right, you can see that the new tanks are actually detached from the building. The concave area on the building is actually where the original tanks were connected to the building. We were actually getting a lot of methane gas into the building through cracks and whatnot. Now it's physically separated from the building.
Which obviously creates a much safer environment for the employees and reduces the risk of explosion inside the operations building.
One of the tanks has a floating top on it that goes up and down. The corrosive environment that is part of every sewer plant had destroyed the mechanisms for the old tank for the lid to go up and down.
Yeah, that's actually the picture you see to the left is the floating cover. That's why there's that gap. It actually goes up and down.
So you actually,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so you actually had gases that were being released not only into the air but into the building itself where the employees were working. So it was a hazardous condition for the employees that we needed to obviously take care of as soon as possible.
One of the other safety issues changes compliance standards is the electrical controls need to be in a separate part of the building in an explosion-proof room, so that if there is a leak of gas in there, that the electrical switches don't cause an explosion or cause a fire. 1977, I believe it was, there had been a flash fire at the plant. So that building was built in 1962. So because of the corrosive environment, despite significant work to keep things up, it was outdated, had exceeded its life expectancy, and new regulations required us to make significant changes there. Thank you.
That's actually a picture of the new screw presses that will go online and hopefully in the next week or two. The filter presses, the old filter presses were from the 80s. They had already been rebuilt once. They were well exceeding the lifespan.
And what this equipment does all that particulate that's taken out of the water, the actual water, is turned into a sludge that is, with these, pressed into a, what do they call it, fine cake? Cake, for better. Just to be pleasant, exactly. So that obviously we want to de-water that cake as much as possible before it's shipped off to a landfill. It's used as cover up at Manchester landfill for their nighttime covering operations. And obviously we want to get the weight down as much as possible. Water weighs 8 pounds per gallon. So anything we can do to eliminate the water from that cake is critical to reducing our costs for taking that sludge away.
That's the polymer system for the UV water for the screw presses. It's a lot better designed than the old system. Guys used to actually just do it by eyeball. Now it's actually computer controlled.
I was going to say, in the future, a lot of that computer control, we're doing software right now, will actually be remote monitoring. So Mike will be able to hear alarms, respond to alarms, and be able to know what's going on at the plant 24/7, from a safety standpoint, environmental, and also making sure the operations are constantly working.
That's the new COMAC building that's actually under roof now, and it should be operational in hopefully about a month.
So this was part of the, also as part of the EPA mandate to reduce our phosphorus load going into Goose Creek. It's a newer technology, but it's in use in many places where magnetite, I always forget, magnetite pellets are swirled in with the wastewater, and the magnetite attracts the phosphorus, and so the phosphorus is actually pulled out of the water.
A giant magnet.
Yes, exactly. A giant magnet hits the magnetite, pulls all that stuff out of the water. So through that mechanical process, we are able to reduce our phosphorus load substantially so we can meet our EPA mandate. So that should be hopefully, again, up and running in 4 to 6 weeks.
Right, and this stems from the 1973 Clean Water Act, and a lot of the stuff that we're having to do with water systems and with wastewater systems right now. So the mandates that came down from the EPA were at such a low level for reduction of phosphorus that when they came out with that, it wasn't possible to meet that limit without spending significant amounts of money. So part of the settlement, we found a system that would work. We tested it at the plant. They brought a smaller version in on a tractor trailer, and it appears to work. So we have an agreement with the EPA over the next 3 years to test and make sure that the system works. And it's supposed to go online. It's about a 3-4 week process. Later this month, it's supposed to go online for that testing process. So hopefully by the end of October, it will be up and running.
And during the testing process, I recall visiting the site, and you all did too. They had the pre-COMAG water, which was it was cloudy. The post-COMAG, after it goes through the process, is almost crystal clear, just like that bottled water. So it's reducing sediment, it's reducing other pollutants as well that produce a much cleaner effluent going into the creek. So all in all, it's a very good, obviously,
and there's a few other facilities around other townships that have the COMAC system also that we went and looked at and learned from them a lot before we put ours in. So we're kind of glad that we were at the end of the rope of putting it in so we can learn from their mistakes and from a cost standpoint and what's the best way to design it and actually install it. So that was a road trip done by some of the waste authority people.
Yeah, I think these numbers are really telling, and they kind of make it real for you what phosphorus in that discharge means. So as Dave said, our average flow is about 4 million gallons a day. And even at a low level of concentration of phosphorus, in 2017, our average was about 62 pounds a day. So think about working out with weights, what 62 pounds equals. It's pretty heavy. Every day, 62 pounds of phosphorus, which is a nutrient for algae plant growth in the creek, and is sent in. So obviously it's a pollutant and it needs to be reduced. So where we are now in 2020 with one of those projects that you saw earlier, we're down to 25 pounds a day from 62. So that's about a 60% reduction. And then when this COMAG system is in operation, you can see how quite complex it is. That's a significant building with a significant set of equipment in it. It'll reduce, assuming that we hit the ultimate target that EPA has given us, from the 25 pounds a day where it is today to less than 2 pounds a day. So 62 pounds down to 2 pounds, basically from 2017 to 2022. That is an incredible achievement, and you get all the other benefits of the water quality, because you get the sediment out that is not only containing the phosphorus, but other pollutants into the creek. Goose Creek, further downstream, is a source of drinking water in Delaware County. So we're improving the environment, we're improving the lives and health of people in this area.
Okay, there you get a closer shot of the new COMAG system, so you can see this will be under roof, or
It is under roof.
It is.
Yeah.
It is now.
So all the process takes place inside this building, where it goes through this, again, magnetite, and then the magnetite's collected back with a giant magnet, and then the cleaner effluent goes out the other end.
For an idea of size, there is a person standing in the lower left-hand corner
Yep, right there.
in a yellow jacket, so you
Yep,
can
right
see
there.
from that. And then on the scaffolding, you can see how significant the size of the building is.
Yep. Okay. And again, the ultimate destination for our effluent is Goose Creek. And you can see the substantial flow. Again, 4 million gallons of water is a lot of water per day, which is discharged into the creek, and then on to the, eventually the Schuylkill River. No, not Schuylkill.
Delaware Bay, and that looks like it might be a picture of Cape.
I think that's Cape Cod.
That's Cape Cod,
It is.
yeah.
Very nice. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay. And now we'll go into our continued investment in the overall system.
That's just a picture of I&I into the system. The I&I, you know, like was said earlier, we normally flow plus or minus 4 million gallons a day. With the rain event we just had last week, we were pushing over 8 million. We brought the I&I down because not too many years ago, that flow would have been over 10 million a day. We would have flooded Headworks and all that. So it's, the work that we've done has helped, but there's still plenty out there.
Can you explain again why we get so much more influent on rainy days when we have a separate stormwater system and a separate sewer
Because you're
system?
taking a lot of groundwater.
So all the there's a lot of groundwater that's seeping
Seeps
into,
right in there. All
Through
the
cracks,
cracks and
holes.
joints.
in the sewer pipes.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, we do not have a combined system.
Right, yeah, I know that, it's about the other pipes.
Yeah.
The other source is sump pumps, people's basements.
Yes.
They're not supposed to be discharging into the sanitary sewer, but that's a large part of it too with rain
It's a
events.
big high percentage.
Yeah, that is.
We're hoping to stop.
That's just more deteriorated pipe. That's some equipment. Picture on the far left is actually from West Elmwood Pump Station. The bid is out for that project right now to replace some of those pumps. That picture is actually 3 stories underground, just to give you a concept. The center picture is a muffin monster from one of the other pump stations. You can see how much deterioration. That's sitting in the flow channel 24/7, 365 days a year. And then the far picture is Taylor Road Pump Station. That's an original generator back into the 60s. That generator, we actually had to babysit during this last event. We had a guy stationed out there because of that, the age of that generator. And it was running, it ran in excess of 24 hours to keep that station going.
One thing I want to add with the West Town Way state pump station also is that the way it was designed many years ago didn't allow for the pump to be lifted properly out through a little tiny opening at the top. So the new design will actually change that, and will be, from a safety standpoint for the employees also, it'll be a lot safer with the new design that we did for the West Town Way pump station.
Yeah, to get one of those pumps out, Tina has a good point. You literally, they had to cut a roof in the ceiling years ago. The crane sits outside and you're doing everything by walkie-talkie to the crane operator. Quite a few years ago, we had a guy sustain a pretty good hand injury because of that. That's pictures from the recent Five Points Road pipe collapse. You can see the picture on the left. That hole was actually just opened up in the roadway, and that's right in the center of the road. We lost 300 feet of pipe. That was asbestos concrete pipe that was just so brittle. As you were digging, you couldn't even see the pipe. It was that bad.
I think one point we want to also make here is that this is an emergency situation with the capital improvement plan, next 10-year capital improvement plan. We hope to avoid situations like this. Emergencies cost a lot more money, sometimes twice the amount, I'd say.
On average, yeah.
On average, that it would normally cost. So with our plan in place, this will avoid a lot of the emergency situations that are occurring, plus from a cost standpoint also.
As the crew was working to replace the part that collapsed, they needed to find a solid section of pipe to tie in to make the repair. They couldn't find that in that 300 some odd feet, so the total length of the repair was approximately 880 feet. And the cost of that was about $500,000. To get an idea of how much pipe we have in the township, the picture at the far left, at the door when you come in, that's all green, that map, that's a map of West Goshen Township. So within the township borders, and you'll see over there, there's little green numbers that have the total number. Well, every manhole's got a label on it throughout the system. There's over 220 miles of pipe in the collection system just in West Goshen Township. And this whole system, we're just talking about in West Goshen. So if you do the math on that, $500,000 for 880 feet, that comes out to probably about $50 million on that if you had to do an emergency repair on the whole system. We don't have to do that. There's different kinds of pipe that are in the ground. But the inspection process that we go through regularly now is to find places that need to be repaired, need to be replaced, need to be lined, or parts that are good. So that's been a very robust part of the work that we've done over the last 5 to 6 years to find places where we need to take action before there's an emergency repair.
Yeah, the next slide actually shows, sorry, that's more of the 5 points repair. And more of 5 points. That picture there is the camera truck that West Goshen owns, that's out as absolutely much as we can possibly have that truck out. Last year, they cleaned and televised over 12 miles of pipe, of the 200 miles of collection system. So we're constantly out looking. We're constantly out looking for I&I. We're looking for potential areas of problem we can fix before it becomes a problem. And that's the jet truck that comes in conjunction with the camera truck that's cleaning the pipe ahead of the camera so we can get a really good look at the pipe.
Hey Dave, how often does the jet truck need to clear blockages in the system that you have? You know, grease build up or...
It runs routine. We get a couple blockages a week, and it's out within a few minutes.
And these are residents who notice a backup in their home or overflow from a sewer line outside somewhere.
Yeah.
They'll contact the township and you can get that line cleared.
Yeah, it's to have our own jet truck in a situation like that where you have potential to have effluent going into somebody's basement. It's a really good thing for the residents.
Part of what we've done to help keep costs down, you see mentioned at the top there, reduction of programs, reduction of cost. The CoStar's program is where we are able to purchase equipment through essentially a state contract.
Yeah, exactly.
With pre-approved vendors that provide this equipment throughout the state. So one of the first things that we did just over 5 years ago when we started this was sign up for CoStars. So we've saved significant amounts of money over the last 5 years, and we're continuously engaged in that process. Whenever we can buy equipment at a reduced price. It's not reduced quality on the equipment. It's the same equipment that everybody else buys. But because we're buying it through this process with the state, we do get a reduced cost. So we're very conscientious. We all live in the township just like you guys do. So we want to keep the cost down as much as we can.
The camera truck and jet truck were both co-star purchases. That's an aerial picture of the plant back in 2015. And that's an aerial picture in 21. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see the updated digester building, the COMAG. You can't really see the blower work or the underground lines and all that have been replaced there. So there's been a lot, in 6 years, there's been a lot of work in that picture.
Okay, so this is where I get to take over and go over an overview. And Walt and Tina, if you want to jump in and add any points, please do. Over the last 5 years, we've spent approximately $27 million. The bond issue that we went out for 3 years ago was only $17 million. In that, the rest of the funds, we do have contracts with the other 4 townships that are mentioned right there on the slide. And they do make payments to West Goshen based on the percentage of flow that they have at the sewer plant and different lines, pump stations where their product flows through. We also have had $3 million in sewer authority revenues that have gone into this process. Next slide, please.
Excuse me, could you just clarify where the sewer authority gets their revenue if the sewer rates are coming to the township?
The township provides the money to the sewer authority. There's, I forget the exact dollar amount that comes over each year.
Well, Walt can probably add to this, but we actually had, when this whole journey started with the first 5-year CIP, the sewer authority had about $5 or $6 million of fund balances that have been collected over the years. We get tapping fees when a new development is built. So every home that gets built in the township pays a prescribed fee. It's determined by some formula that's statewide. It's a calculated value. It's in the order of about $2,800 per home. So every home that's being built in Woodlands, for example, right now funds $2,800 or something like that to the sewer authority directly. It does not go to the township. There's also a connection fee that the township gets. So really that $3 million was actually on-hand balances at the start of this, and we spent it on some of these improvements. So right now our only revenue source really is the tapping fees. Walt, anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered it nicely, Sean.
Thanks.
So this slide just shows the breakdown on the budget expenses that's there. You can read that. Next slide, please. One thing that's Walt ran a report a couple of weeks ago for us of the major wastewater treatment plants in Chester County. And Walt, I think we were number 4 on that list.
Yeah, we're the 4th largest at 6 million gallons in capacity.
Okay, so on the chart that we have right here, there are 74 different treatment plants in Chester County on that list. And West Goshen is number 12 on the list, 12 from the left, which is in the yellow, right there. So those are based on quarterly rates. Currently, West Goshen quarterly rate for wastewater treatment is $105 per quarter. That comes out to about $35 a month. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we have we're looking forward for continuing investment. And the purpose of the continuing investment in the system is regulatory compliance. As we mentioned before, we have a lot of mandates that come out of Washington, D.C. and out of Harrisburg that we need to comply with. Those are unfunded mandates, so we need to pay for them as we go. We have an infrastructure that deteriorates. The caustic nature of the hydrogen sulfide comes into contact with air in those pipes. It changes to sulfuric acid, and it eats concrete, it eats metal. So there's things that we have to do to replace that. And when you're pushing through 5, 6, 7 million gallons a day through those pumps over a number of years, they do wear out. The sewer plant staff has done a great job rebuilding things as they can. We've exceeded the life expectancy on almost all the equipment that's there and all the buildings that are there. And we've had to replace it. There's other things that we have to replace as we're going forward in the future with some of the pump stations and looking at the collection system as well. Other concerns, other mandates, safety concerns. You know, the safety standards have changed by law, so there's a lot of things that we have to do to meet with that, and a lot of the work that we have done in the past has been to meet those safety requirements, and looking forward, we have to look at those as well. And also to sustain the level of service that is expected by the customers. When you're using your sewer system, when you flush, it's out of sight, out of mind, and you don't think about all of the technology and the science that goes into treating things. But we want to make sure that it keeps running, that it keeps flowing, and that we don't have problems with that. So the continuing investment, we're going to be able to do that going forward into the future. We're going to be able to continue our inspections and the upgrades as we need. Tina, go ahead.
Yeah, Ted, I just wanted to add one thing regarding regulatory compliance, since that's my world and I've been doing that for 40 years. I know that right now we're trying to plan for the regulatory future. As of now, we did plan for it. We don't know what regulations may come out in the future that may require additional work and money and effort, and also to comply. So that's as of we know as of today.
And just to put a dollar figure on regulatory compliance, the COMAG system that we entered into an agreement with EPA to drop the phosphorus down, it's going to cost approximately $27,000 a month to operate. So while we're asking for a rate increase, it as much covers the operating expenses of the plant as it does the capital plan. So there's two things that happen when the rates go up.
Before we move on, the other chart that's at the back of the room, the white chart, that is an area in green where there's 302 parcels in the township that are not connected to the sewer system. They have on-site septic or on-site cesspools. So that's an issue that we have to look at going forward into the future. That's not planned in this, the 10-year spending plan that we have right now. And we're just starting to look at those things. So that's why we had that prepared and presented at the last Sewer Authority meeting. So there are expenses in the future. We don't know what they're going to be yet. Those systems depend on whether those cesspools and those septic tanks continue to function properly. In order to tie in, if the Sewer Authority was to extend the sewer lines, if it comes within 150 feet of a residence, that residence has to tie in. So they'd have to pay in, and those costs can be extreme. Those costs are on the property owners. So this isn't something that we're planning to do immediately. We have to wait until there's a need to do it. But right now we're planning to see what's the most feasible way to put, where to put those sewer lines in and how to tie in so it keeps the cost down if we have to do that in the future.
And I just want to add, just the cost to do a study like that to determine where the cesspools are versus the septic systems costs money, and obviously time to do that. Our first priority would be on the cesspools because of the environmental contamination associated with that. And then our second priority, which right now we're trying to determine where the cesspools are versus the septic.
So part of the funding, what we have to consider is how we're going to pay for this going forward. So next slide, please. So funding for our 10-year capital investment program, we have a few sources of funding that we're looking at. First, the projected capital investment over the next 10 years is $14.4 million. Of that, we expect approximately $2.8 million from the other townships, which are listed in there under funding. And we are recommending a process, essentially pay as we go for West Goshen, with an increase in the sewer rates to pay for that as we go, rather than bond issues and loans. Of course, there's interest on all those, and you have to pay that back. So we've examined a lot of those issues. Grants, we've been very successful over the last 5 years. We've received approximately $1.75 million in grants. We look at those every single year. I don't remember the grants that we got this past year.
They're about $500,000.
Right.
Give or take.
Right, and some of the slides earlier on in the show had some of the systems that we were able to put in place because of the grants. So we keep looking for those. We don't know what opportunities are going to be available in the future for granting. We do know that, I'm sorry for funding. Congress is working on an infrastructure bill right now, a couple of them. We don't know what the dollar amount is that's going to be available, but there are various sources, and we do seek those out each year. So next slide, please.
Ted, before you roll off, just to clear up some confusion on my end, on the prior slide there, 2016 and 2021 capital expenses, there was $27 million spent over a 5-year CIP, and funding for a 10-year proposed CIP for 2022 through 2031 is 14.4. So it's approximately half of what was spent over the past 5 years. Is that what's being suggested?
Yes.
Yeah, half and twice the time frame, 10 years instead of 5.
So we're looking at half over the next 10 years as opposed to double that over the past 5 years is what you're looking at.
Correct.
Now the funding here for the past 5 years, you has the $7 million from the 4 partner municipalities, and here you're looking at $2.8 million from the partner municipalities over the next 10 years. Can you explain the discrepancy there?
Well, there's no discrepancy. The municipalities or partners help pay for improvements at the sewer plant because all of the product that comes in ends up at the sewer plant to be treated. So it's based on the percentage of flows, that are reserved for each of those townships with repairs there. So West Goshen pays a portion, and each of the contributing townships pay a portion at the sewer plant. But not all 5 municipalities, including West Goshen, West Goshen uses all of those, and the collection system and the pump stations, but not all of the township use all the different pump stations. So West Whiteland, for example, if you look at the map on the far left side, the product that comes from West Whiteland will only go through a portion of the township's collection system. The portion that comes from East Goshen only goes through a portion, so it's not the full plant. It's not the same as paying the same portion or the same percentage at the plant as it is through each pump station. West Town White pump station, East Goshen pumps through there. The other 3 townships do not. So that's why there appears to be a difference in the amount of contribution over the last 5 years, where a majority of the work was at the sewer plant.
John, just for an example, with the capital projects we're just doing and the bond projects, it looks like West Whiteland Township pays about 13.667% of that project, those projects, and it looks like East Goshen pays about 16.67%. And we pay the rest. So it's a matter of how much of the capacity the other townships use, and what they contribute to us based on.
I think a lot of it is based on the type of projects we're doing. That's the key.
I think that's the key thing is the projects that are being
but the
identified.
project doesn't tap into
being
their
utilized by
area.
different municipalities.
Exactly.
Right.
Initially, we had a lot of work to do, John, and it was a lot of areas it covered as far as townships that contribute. But now we're drilling down to the work that's being done. So those townships aren't impacted because of the type of projects we have left over the next 10 years. Not impacted as much.
Right, so the projects going forward are pump stations that we're looking at. So that the pump stations, not each township pushes product through each pump station. So depending on what we're doing in each place, will determine how much those townships will pay that contribute product to that pump station.
So just looking at this numbers here, I could infer it looks as if primarily the projects being considered for the next 10 years are going to be projects that are primarily used by West Goshen.
Correct.
Because we're paying $11.6 million out of a $14.4 million capital budget over 10 years, so most of that's going to be West Goshen related then. That's your point.
That's right, John. Yeah, that's right.
Excuse me. I just learned that West Whiteland has a pump station in West Goshen over on Grubbs Mill. I just always thought that was a West Goshen pump station. So how does that work? The gentleman I talked to, I think, said that some of our sewage goes through that pump station that goes on to their sewage plant. So do we get their credit or do we pay them for any of that?
We pay them for the flow. There's a meter, and our flow going into that station is is pulled away from what we charge them.
Gallon per gallon.
I'm sorry, so you said we pay them, so West Goshen Township writes a quarterly check, an annual check to West Whiteland for that?
Mike would know better. It's such a small flow, it may be a credit on that one. But, you know, there's cross agreements.
Yeah, I just found that interesting. I just always assumed that was a West Goshen pump station. Okay, thank you.
All right, next slide, please. So to keep the funding at the level that we need to operate for the next 3 years, we've got a chart set up right there. We're recommending to the Board of Supervisors an increase from $105 per quarter to $120 per quarter. So that comes out to a $5 per month increase. Just to point out, when we get to one of the other slides, where that puts us with the townships, that chart we have with 74 sewer plants on it before, we were ranked number 12. We'll come on to that chart, so maybe we could advance to that. So that puts us at number 16. There's 2 yellow lines over on the left-hand side, so we would move from number 12 to number 16 out of the 74. I don't know if you've been following the news over the past month or so. Last month, actually about 2 weeks ago, Aqua announced or requested sewer rate increases. A number of articles in different townships. Limerick Township over in Montgomery County is the focus of this one article that came out on August 26, 2021. In here, they're asking for increases with the Public Utility Commission for water and for sewer. And the company announced that the average monthly residential wastewater bill would increase from $55.51 to $73.95 for Limerick Township. So that's an increase of approximately 33%. What we're looking at right now in West Goshen is $35 per month. In Limerick Township, they're paying $55 per month. They're going up to almost $74 a month. Our increase takes us up to about $40 a month if it's approved by the Board of Supervisors. Once again, West Goshen Township in Chester County is the 4th largest wastewater treatment plant in the county. So even though percentage-wise it looks like a big increase, dollar-wise it's very modest compared to what many of the other wastewater treatment plants are paying now per quarter. And many of those are being operated by Aqua. So there's a significant increase in those rates. So next slide, please.
Before you go,
Go ahead, John.
of these, I believe you said there were 74 sewer
If I counted correctly.
in the entire county.
No, not on this chart. There's 74. On this chart.
On this chart,
Right.
right, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
On this chart, on that chart that's up there right now, right?
Right.
There's 74, correct?
If I counted correctly.
Okay. Now, of those 74 sewer authorities, how many of those are owned by and operated by Aqua, and how many are owned by the municipality for which they're associated with?
I don't have an answer on that. And Corey Salmon from HRG is here with us tonight. Corey, do you have an idea of how many are operated by Aqua and how many are operated by municipal?
I don't know between the two, but if Aqua's run the system, they own that, they acquire the plants, so they would take ownership of the ones that they're where they increase the system, or they would own the plant and the collection system in those areas that you're asking.
Right.
So you guys did the percentage between the two, and that's hard to say. I know they're acquiring systems frequently.
Good. Thanks, Corey. So we don't have the exact number on that, but you can see based on the chart here that West Goshen sewer plant is one of the lower ones. It's in the lower 20%. I believe it by
I'm
math.
just trying to ascertain this, comparing apples to apples, of all the municipalities listed there, how many of those are owned by Aqua? Does Aqua charge more or less? I'm trying to get some feel from that. That's the purpose of the question.
Understood. Thank you.
John, one thing, we're the 4th largest sewer system in Chester County, and we're the 3rd lowest among those those four. And the one that's higher, number 3, it's got 7.5 million gallons of capacity. We have 6 million gallons is Coatesville. And Coatesville is to the right of even that 120. So that's a privately owned facility. It's bigger than us. If you think volume drives costs down, it does. It's pretty linear until you get to Coatesville. We're switched with Coatesville. It's just a rough back-of-the-envelope calculation I did a couple weeks ago. But generally speaking, Coatesville should be lower than us, but they're privately held, so they have to keep their investors happy.
Coatesville is in the right third of the chart that's over there. And I believe Coatesville is operated by Aqua.
Can I make a comment, please?
Yeah.
I appreciate that chart. However, I'm kind of thinking along the lines of Mr. Hellman, where is it really comparing apples to apples? Because some of those smaller townships might only have 300 users, where we have 6,600 in West Goshen, plus you calculate in the other townships. I mean, when you have 9,000 rate, it's just cheaper. The efficiencies are greater, and the rates should be lower. So all those small municipalities to the right only have a couple hundred ratepayers. So I appreciate the chart, but we do have to bear in mind what we're comparing.
Well, we're comparing the monthly rates, or the quarterly rates that are paid by residents. So it's not an issue of apples to apples, oranges to oranges. It's monthly rates that are being paid, or the quarterly rates that are being paid across the board. So that's the purpose of the chart, to show what the rate is, quarterly rate that's being paid in those areas. Next chart, please, or next slide.
Can we take a 2-minute recess?
Sure.
Because this is all I have, because obviously Josh was supposed to do the presentation.
Okay.
I don't have access to the rest of the
Well, I think the rest of the slides weren't necessarily going to be presented unless they're like really detailed slides on projects and everything else. So what I would like to do, Casey, really is we've gone through the presentation that we wanted to do. So at this point, if the board has questions for the authority, and we can have a conversation here about that, and then once the board question has been answered, we'll ask if there are any questions from the public and ask the questions that way. So board members, do you have any questions about the presentation or the projects or the forward plan or the numbers that have been shown? I mean, the basic outcome here is a recommendation from the authority to consider a sewer fee increase for 2022 to go from $105 to $120 per quarter. Actually says it wrong on that chart. If you look, it says $120 per quarter increase. The increase is to $120 per quarter. So just to make sure that's clear. So that's really the recommendation tonight. It's really about having the opportunity to ask questions about the information that's been presented. See what you have. So Hugh or John or Ashley. Any questions?
I asked mine already.
You got yours answered? Okay, just one point, obviously I'm quite close to this. I mean, the modeling that's been done about this sewer rate increase, to Walt's point, it not only pays for the capital plan, the $11 million that West Goshen is going to contribute, hopefully less if we get some grants here in the next 10 years, it'll be less than that. But it also pays for the fact that we've got to operate this additional equipment that we've put in. It allows for inflation over the next 10 years on wages, the cost of materials and chemicals to operate, the cost of maintenance, cost of electricity. We've built in assumptions around a 3 to 4% inflation factor, and more than half the increase, I think, well, at least in the near term, we know we're projecting what the whole thing, but half of this increase is associated with cost of inflation, and only half of the increase is associated with the additional capital investment, roughly speaking. So I just wanted to point that out. I do think it's one of the things that gets missed in this authority presentation, which is really focused on the capital needs versus the actual fact that this thing has to run 24/7, 365, and it costs money, and then, as time goes by, things get more expensive to run. So just wanted to point that out.
We do have monthly meetings the first Wednesday of every month. We meet right here in this room at 7 o'clock. We go over all the technical issues, money issues, things like that regularly at every meeting. So some of our meetings are 3 and 4 hours long. If you want to come for part of that or all of that, you're welcome. The meetings are all open to the public. But we really go in depth into all of the engineering, the science, everything else that has to be done as we're looking forward at those meetings. Any other questions?
I just had a question. So thank you guys for the presentation. That was really good. I actually learned some things that I didn't know before. So is this 14.4 million projected capital investment based on our current users, based on the current? So I guess my question is, we have this big Greystone being built. We have a lot of people moving into the township. Have you calculated that additional income or fees into this numbers?
Walt's our modeling expert. He has a really spreadsheet that'll mess with your head, certainly. So it does include the build out of woodlands, the income from that, from the sewer fees that will be applied, etc.
Yes, it does.
And the tapping fees associated with that.
Tapping fees.
So is that part of the reason that it's going from 105 to only 120?
You could say
Only
that.
120? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, there was a slide, if you go back, Casey. I mean, the intention really here is to fund the additional operating expense increases with the rate increase and allow about, what do I have, what did I say, the $900,000 to $1 million per year transfer to the authority to spend on these capital improvements, the pump stations that still need upgrading, the lines that need lining, stop those roots and all that infiltration, fix problems before they become emergencies. And 10 years, $1 million a year, that's where you get the $10, $11 million. So it's a forward-looking, thought-through plan designed to invest in public assets, with a process that's going to be funded through the sewer fee increase, pay as we go, not kicking the can down the road, not borrowing a bunch of money and letting someone else's generation pay it off. It's about paying for the remaining investments as we go. We've done the bulk of the large process investment treatment plan in the last 5 years, and that we had to do it in a short time frame because of the seriousness of some of those issues. You heard about them, and that's why we needed to borrow the money then to fix those up front. So
I do want to add, before the 5 years and this group got involved in the sewer authority, the system was neglected for almost 60 years. So, no money was really put into it. And over the past 5 years, this board was able to put money into it and plan properly from an engineering standpoint. So, moving forward, we're planning for another 10 years to make sure it doesn't happen again.
You should always have a rolling plan of investment for any asset that you own, whether it's your house. You know about what needs fixing and by when the roof needs repair, the HVAC needs to be fixed. You want to have a forward-looking plan. Otherwise you run till it breaks and it costs you a lot more to fix it in an emergency. We're trying to avoid that with the kind of detailed capital improvement plan that we have here. So, are there any questions that you have as an attendee that we haven't addressed that you'd like to comment on or ask? Yes, would you mind stating your name, please?
Yeah, my name is Tom Bowen, B-O-W-E-N. I'd like to know how the engineers, with all of this capital investment that's been done in the past and into the future, how are the engineers selected? What process is involved with the selection of the engineers and all the costs that go to their fees?
Okay. We had a vetting process when we started this process 5 years ago. We had an engineer for the sewer authority at that time. But looking forward in the project, we needed an engineer, a company that was able to do everything that we needed. We were to keep it in-house. A lot of the planning, a lot of the design work that had been done before had been outsourced. It was a smaller engineer, and we found that we got a much better product when it was all developed in the house. So we were looking, who has experience in this area, We hired HRG to do the work, but it was a very thorough review process that we had gone through. Who has the experience in doing this type of work with wastewater treatment plants, who has the design staff and the engineers who can provide good advice to us, good schematics, everything else that needs to be done in the process before we agree to the contract with HRG. So, and we've received very good services from HRG over the last 5 years.
Did you go out to other firms for bids or for their?
We looked at a handful.
I know what the final result was. What I'm asking is how did you get there?
We had an interviewing process. We had presentations from them. Okay. I don't remember how many firms were involved. This was 5 years ago that we looked at it. I'm sorry, it was the process started about 6 years ago, and it completed just over 5 years ago in the selection.
Okay. It's a good question about your engineer, because as a consulting engineer, you want some consistency, but you also want to know you're getting value for your money. So one of the tests you can do, and we're going to do it here at the end of this 5-year initial period, is to go back and look at the cost of the engineering versus the overall project cost. Typically, that range is in the 15 to 20% of the total cost of a project.
Well, that was going to be my next question, is I didn't see on any of these charts anything about engineering fees. And here you are saying it's 15%. But it's not like it's 0.1%.
No.
And at 15%, I would have expected to see that on some of these charts.
So usually you want a consulting engineer that gives you the professional staff that you know are confident and can deliver a $27 million investment project. Whether it's one project, $100 million, 10, 15 projects over 5 years, you want someone who's going to do the design. There's all the information about the plant, and it's not reinventing the wheel and on a learning curve for every project. So you're going to do a selection, you're going to probably stick with that and make sure you've got the A-team from that consultant working with you. And you want to make sure as you go along that your typical rule of thumb, the cost of engineering as a percent of the total project cost is generally in line. And we're probably at that point now where we need to recheck that and make sure that who we have is the right company for the next period. So it's a good point, and I'm sure the authority will take a look at it.
Right, as said from Tommy is an engineer by training, so he's got some familiarity with the process. Thanks for the question. Very good.
May I add something to that? If you look at the treasurer's report, there's one project that we did. It was an Interceptor A project, about $1.4 million. We list all the vendors that we had and what we paid them in the engineering firm. So if you really want to dig into it, you can just go in to the website, pick up this report, and as one project, you can see what the engineering costs were associated with it. And it's less than 15%.
Another question?
Good question, thank you.
I have a couple.
You can stay there, Mark, it's fine.
Okay, yeah, this is.
Getting more comfortable.
Yeah. Back to the on-lot sewer system, those that have to hook up, is that 150 feet or yards feet from their property or from their home?
From the face of the home.
From the face of their structure,
Correct.
The home, not the property. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because some people could have a 6-acre property and be 3
And
acres
then
back.
also, we're discussing just increase in residential rates, but obviously, do you know the breakdown between residential rates and commercial and industrial? Will they also see a rate increase?
So we didn't put a percentage up there, but all rates have to be reasonable and uniform in terms of increases. So it would be the same percent increase across the board is really the proposal. I think, Walt, that's what you have in your model.
Right.
Yeah.
My concern is with the straight across the board, $15 per residence is, single people use a lot less water that ends up in the sewage system than families of 5 or 6 or 7. So we talk a lot in this township about paying your fair share, and we're discussing stormwater fees. You have to pay your fair share, and if you have a big house, you're going to pay more than a little house. So I don't understand why everything is a flat increase for wastewater rates for usage. Can you just explain why we don't base it on
It's a good question, and obviously there are different philosophies of how you can build the service. I guess historically the complexity wasn't there to justify figuring out what a fixed base fee should be for everyone who's connected into a system that has to be available 24/7, 365 to accept service. So whether you flush 1 gallon or 1,000 gallons, you need a pipe that connects you all the way through to treatment and out, treat everything you send to it and out into the creek. So there's a huge amount of fixed cost in just having a connection into the system. However, there is costs that are proportional to the amount of flow that is sent. I think in the historical where we've gotten to as the township has grown, it's just been a fixed fee approach. You can go to system, a billing process that has, I'll say, additional complexity, but which is perhaps perceived as being fairer, which is this calculation around how much wood are you using, and paying a percentage of cost on that, but also paying a fixed base fee that you might have, just like on your electric bill, basically. So I hope we continue to debate, discuss that, not routinely. This process, given the relatively cost-effective rates that we have in comparison to other townships, has been served as well. I guess it's a question for the board and the authority to consider whether that's something worth investigating further. It does come at a cost of additional complexity, township staff figuring things out, new billing systems. It can add more cost to township operations than the potential fairness factor is for individuals.
And then one final comment, I couldn't find the documentation I had, but I recall that the hospital uses like 5% or 5.2% of the usage through the sewer plant, but for some reason they're charged like a minimal wastewater fee every quarter.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's true, but I don't have that information.
Yeah, I'd have to take a look. I know they are the previous sewer use ordinance was a little archaic. We would charge a hotel or a hospital based on occupied beds. It's kind of a ridiculous way to do sewer rates. So Mike Moff has been encouraging the implementation of meters at a lot of these large users. So I'm not sure about the hospital, but I think we've transitioned them to a meter base where we take Aqua's water readings on a quarterly basis and transfer those into a sanitary sewer rate, because obviously 99.9% of their water is being flushed down the sewer. It's not being consumed or anything else. So.
Right. I think I recall thinking that we're losing out on possibly $80,000 to $120,000 a year.
It's a good question, Marcia. Let's just find out what the current status is on that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I used to,
Can I get your name, sir?
Phil Bagley, I'm Philip Bagley. I used to call on Philadelphia's wastewater companies, and my company was a large chemical company that supplied tank trucks and tote bins and drums and all that stuff. But I was more in the capacity of chemistry, is my background, and they used a lot of toluenes, a lot of sulfurics and hexanes and a lot of acids. Now there's a new product now. Well, it's not new. It's been around about 3,000 years. It's called chitosan. It's a fungal system off the arthropods, and it's used in the surgery rooms for hemophiliacs and clotting of blood. It's used in the wastewater now, and also when they have oil spills, they use this product. It's totally green. It's a cycle. It comes from like the shrimp shells. Arthropods have their skeletal structure on the outside. And the problem is in a lot of states like Louisiana and South Carolina, they just put it in landfills. So this company takes it and processes it. I think it's a NCOCH3 is the formulation. But not to get too technical, it forms a hydrogen atom, the process. It's all green. It's the most abundant substance on the earth next to cellulose. Is the company or the township looking into anything like that? It's about 35 to 40% cheaper than the petrochemical products coming like from DuPont, everybody else.
So is this, Corey, do you have any idea about how this will be used in the process?
I can see it being used as a coagulant. We use alum and things of that such. currently for coagulation, but.
Yeah, we don't use any of the other products that you mentioned. We don't use any petrochemical.
But still,
You use chemicals, right?
yes, we do use chemicals.
Yeah, well, this is replacing man-made chemicals. This is a process that, you know, without going into details on it, it's a product that is all green, natural. It's used for water purification. Europe has used it for years, and the.
Bill, could you send an email to Casey with the name of the product?
Yeah,
We'll
one of the
pass it on
largest
to Mike.
companies doing it, one of the leaders is Agritech, A-G-R-A, capital T.
If you could just share that knowledge in an email with Casey, we'll get it to Mike and our engineer, and we'll evaluate if it's got a role to play in the plan.
And if you're interested, if you want to have a conversation with the whole sewer authority at our next meeting.
Sure. If you want to bring it up.
Just come to the meeting, we'll spend some time on it. Mike Maffa, the superintendent of the sewer plant, worked in the lab at the plant for a while before he became superintendent. So he's our chemistry guy, and then our engineers from HRG. You know, we'll listen to you.
It has three. It's medical, has a big field of medical, agricultural. It produces better crops, more abundant crops like hybrids.
Right.
Industrial, which probably this fall. Johnson Johnson looking at it to put on for wound care for dressings. The Army is doing the same thing in the field.
Right.
So it's really huge.
Right.
Thank you.
The basic product is chitin. It comes, I think, originally from China or Japan.
Okay.
And then it's processed through, I think it's hydrogen peroxide at high temperatures at 100 F, and it forms an amine, a hydrogen atom, but it's all natural. You know what I mean? There's no really anything that you're putting into the nature that wasn't there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah. Any other questions? Last chance on this topic. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time on that subject. So, authority board members, thank you for your time this evening. Appreciate it. Welcome to stay.
Thank you for the invitation.
Welcome.
Yes, thank
We
you.
have a recommendation. The board will be discussing, deliberating it during the budget setting process, and we'll, if we have any questions, we'll be sure to ask.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Have a good evening.
Yeah. Just take a minute here to regroup and look at the agenda again, see where we are. So I think we are up to agenda item number 4, which is discussion and possible approval of Township stormwater projects, design proposals, the Balmer Road Culvert Project, the Glen Avenue Stormwater Project, and the Legion Drive Stormwater Project. So Rick, you want to come on up, Rick? Are you good back there?
Good back here.
Okay. We can hear you. We're good to go.
Not, we'll let you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you just take this off because it's hard to hear on the video when you rewatch it, when somebody has their mask on, since he's talking like that.
Well, we're gonna COVID protocols are prominent here, so hopefully you can hear me, Margie. And if Rick, we can't hear you, we'll ask you to come forward, all right?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Should I give him a mic? I give him a
You want the mic over there?
Not really.
Come on. You shy.
Gee, thanks.
Okay, Rick, you want to tell us about what we have here in front of the board?
So which one are we starting with? Beaumont Street?
Beaumont, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, the existing culvert on Beaumont Street is a steel shell of some type that was put under the road who knows when. It's hydraulically inadequate. It's two different sizes as the pipe goes under the road. It's in poor condition and has almost no cover. In short, it needs to be replaced rather badly. And the proposal from Carroll is the design proposal to design a new structure for that. Most likely it'll be a precast concrete box, substantially larger than what's there now, which will improve the flooding conditions there and any backwater created by the existing culvert.
So the estimate from Carroll was $40,000 to do the design and all the other prep work in terms of the general permit, E&S plan, etc. Any other design elements, and then also get us through the bidding process. What's the total estimated cost for the project, as best we know at this point?
For construction?
For the whole project, including construction.
I don't have that number.
Did you email it
I
earlier?
gave that to us earlier today.
For Beaumont Street?
Yeah. Yeah, you emailed that to us.
No.
I saw it.
I don't have my email in front of me, so.
I thought it was like 150 for.
No, those were the stormwater projects for the budget for the TMEO
Oh.
PRP projects.
Okay, that's it.
I guess this is something that Carol can give us as part of the scope of their engineering, give us an idea what the cost would be.
Yeah, I'm sure they could provide an estimate, yes.
And if we go with my previous rule of thumb of 15%, we're looking at a project that's going to be in the $600,000 range.
That's probably
Sounds about right.
probably about right.
Okay.
I would, if I had to guess off the cuff with no further information, I'd say probably looking at a $500,000 project area.
But this would be for 2022 construction.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to feel for that one. What are the other two?
Glen Avenue, Sylvan Road. Is that the next one you have on your list? I think Dave is actually more familiar with that project than I am. Are you able to speak to that, Dave?
With Glen Avenue, yeah. We had a sinkhole open up mid-block. Our guys went in.
But when did that happen?
Not sure. We were right at the residence sanitary.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody hit somebody because their sanitary was bad and our storm was bad. So years ago, when the storm went in, somebody hit their sanitary, or when they were having some sanitary work, they hit our storm.
Mm-hmm.
So we went in, made a point repair, but in looking, the entire line was shot. And it's pretty extensive. It's, I want to say 300 some feet off the top of my head.
How far away from
675 feet.
Yeah, on the one run, the total, the one run was 3. But we're looking, right now it runs behind the curve, so part of the investigation would be if we can put the pipe in the street, which would be a lot better construction-wise.
How is this connected at all to the project just
It's at the upper end at the origination.
Okay. Is this like the second phase of 3 or 4 phases that are going to be needed to address the whole situation in this neighborhood?
Yeah, this is the next real bad spot.
Okay.
You say it looks, the piping's bad. Were you able to scope it at all?
We ran the camera a little bit. The bottom is so far gone, we can't get a good picture of it. But the guys, when they were in there looking at it, they were down in looking at it. And the whole bottom of the pipe was shot.
I mean, is it shot to the point, could it be lined?
No, it's only 18-inch line to start with. So
Right.
in order to line it, you really shrink it. And there's so many deflections, and with that much of the bottom going, the 18 inch is better just to replace it.
Okay, I know in Pine Valley, some of the 18-inch line there's going to be lined. That was the goal by the engineer. Might Carroll come up with that solution possibly?
They might, that's part of what we're looking at, but
Okay.
the condition that our guys saw, I don't.
Understood,
Yeah.
but that's part of what we're contracting, he's supposed to do.
So look at it.
Take a look at it, come up with the best plan that would be most economical and it would solve the problem. Gotcha.
So same rule of thumb here, 15% on the 27.6. We're looking at $400,000 project.
Depending on how we go.
Which techniques are used?
Okay, so that's $1 million between these two at this point. Okay, and the third one?
Legion Drive.
Yeah.
That is, as was mentioned before, very similar to the Knollwood project. Legion Drive only has one access point, and this corrugated metal pipe goes under that access point. The pipe is in fairly decent shape at this point. It's deteriorated, but it's not failed in any area that we've been able to find, and it's not bowed either. So it is a candidate for replacement, or relining, which is what we want to do before it gets too bad to do that, because the pipe is about 15 feet underground, so it's a very deep excavation. It would be very costly to dig it up and replace it, plus it would cut off the access to development. So we want to reline it while it's still in reasonably good condition and structurally sound, so that we don't lose that opportunity.
Rick, does this line under the road, does it emerge and need the concrete end caps on it, or is it completely buried? You're just looking at this section that's under the road.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
So like Knollwood was under the road, but you had to put the new concrete walls in at the end?
No.
Is that a similar situation here, or is it just completely a line that's buried deep?
It's just a buried line. It would have to be accessed from the inlets.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not exposed like Knollwood.
Yeah. So this one is estimated for engineering is 22.4, so again, this would be in the 300,000, 350,000 range for construction estimate.
I think that's reasonable. I mean, again, it's going to depend on what lining method is found to be the most effective for that location and installation, but you're probably in that ballpark.
I understand we're required by law to take the lowest bidder, and this will be put out to bid at some point after Carroll's done their engineering, develop a specs and all the scope of work. But can Carroll give us an idea when they give us their final their design package, and what the cost might be, just to give us an idea of where these contractors are coming in with these different prices?
Yeah,
I've
that's...
seen other projects, they come in all over the place. It's crazy. Sometimes it's double, sometimes even triple from one contractor to the next. And it seems odd, that you would think, responsible or reputable contractor coming in at such different levels. But if the engineering effort could try to give us some kind of an idea of what they would estimate to be a reasonable cost for the project, it might give township personnel on the board a better idea of what's a fair price.
Well, that's a typical component of any design, is to get an engineer's estimate of probable cost.
Okay.
Now, granted, that's an engineer's estimate of probable cost, which can vary, but they have a good feel for what they're designing and how it can be constructed.
Okay.
So usually those cost estimates are somewhere within 10-15% of the actual bids. I think what you're seeing now with bids being all over the place is contractors are not sure if they can get supplies. And if they can get supplies, they don't know how much they're going to cost, and they don't know how long it's going to take to get them transported to wherever they need them. So there's a whole lot of unknowns now, and some contractors are obviously not padding, but they're adding that into their bid to cover what they see as a potential loss situation. So if a contractor's hungrier for the job, they're going to sharpen their pencil a little bit, and if they're looking at delays in construction materials and increased costs, they're going to increase their bid.
Understood.
So Yeah.
So we'll see from Carol what they think would be a
Yeah,
estimated.
we absolutely do that on virtually every design we ever do. We get an estimate of cost, so absolutely. But right now, before the design is done, it's a really rough estimate. Once the design is substantially complete, then they can give us a much better cost estimate.
One of the reasons we're reviewing these tonight is so that we can get ahead of, get the designs done here in the next 3-4 months, so that as we go into the spring, you'll be ready to bid the projects. And hopefully kind of hit that cycle when contractors are looking to get baseload work, competitive pricing, more comfortable with putting in aggressive bids. And that's one of the reasons why, or the main reason we're looking at approving possibly tonight this design work. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you can put bids out in January before contractors have their schedules set, you're definitely going to get a better price than doing it now when they're trying to close up towards the end of the year. And we found that in the past, reliably, we get better prices in January, February than we do the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to accept these.
All three, John?
Yes.
A motion from John and a second from you to proceed with design work for these 3 stormwater projects. Are there any final board questions or comments? Are there any public questions or comments on the motion? Margie?
Yes, would you just clarify for me why we are using Carroll Engineering if our stormwater engineer is HRG, and these are stormwater projects?
Could you explain? So Carroll Engineering is our consulting engineer that we use for stormwater project design. What's your alternative, Margie?
So how does the township determine whether they're going to use our stormwater engineering consulting firm, which is HRG, and this is a stormwater project, but we're using Carroll Engineering, who is our appointed consulting engineer? I'm just curious why you choose one over the other, because I thought we had HRG as a stormwater.
I can answer that.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
There's 2 distinctly different facets of stormwater management here. Replacing an existing piping system or pipe is simply a structural excavation issue. It has nothing to do with what's generating the stormwater, how much stormwater is being generated, what the post-construction stormwater management is going to be. It's digging up or relining a pipe that's already there and either replacing it or lining it. So those are totally different skills versus trying to calculate stormwater volumes and rates and what have you, which is generally what we're looking for from HRG to do our TMDL and PRP projects. That's totally different design parameters.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because with HRG, also our sewer engineer, do the sewer pipes and the stormwater pipes sometimes crisscross, or might HRG as the sewer engineer see something if they were handling the storm sewer system as well? So, just curious on that.
Well, I think Rick gave you a good explanation as to why the design approach is with the 2 firms. What is interesting to me is as we get further along on this journey, the 10-year plan and addressing some of the sanitary sewer lines and projects to fix those before they become problems, the synergy and the benefit to the township will be as if we could bid a bigger package of work. So stormwater type projects that are out for lining or excavation and repair, combining a bid package that has both stormwater elements that we've approved in a budget and also what the authority is trying to fix. So the opportunity really to me is on the contracting side to do the construction in terms of saving township money. But thanks for the question, Mike. Are there any other public questions about the motion that we have for approval? Okay, I think we're ready for a vote. So all those in favor of approval say aye. Aye. Any opposed to the motion say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries 4-0. Casey. Okay, the next agenda item is item number 5, discussion and possible approval of Sunset Hollow stormwater project bid. And that is
So,
Casey and Dave.
Yeah, so Dave obviously chip in. We put out for bid, actually, the next two items on the agenda, Sunset Hollow Stormwater Project and Pine Valley Circle Stormwater. Pine Valley Circle is more complex, which we'll get into. Sunset Hollow is relatively, I wouldn't say a simple project, but relatively simple. It's a single street crossing on Sunset Hollow Road. Just in the last week's storm, our crew had to go out twice and scrape feet of mud from the roadway because of we're getting a lot of erosion up the hill. So there is an existing single pipe. Is that what's there right now?
Yeah,
there's an existing single pipe that crosses underneath Sunset Hollow Road. It cannot take the stormwater, so it all backs up and then hits tops and goes over top of the road, brings with it debris and mud and everything else. The project designed by Carroll Engineering, we originally envisioned a box culvert to go underneath, but there's not enough cover. Oh, that's right. We have tons of utility conflicts in that location. So we are looking at three, what's called squash pipe, which is elliptical pipe, 3 crossings together going across the road that will more than triple the capacity to get that water across the street without it having overflow and go over the top over the road. Dave, anything else on the design?
No, just the other reason for the mobiles, if we did get one pipe to flow, we still have 2, hopefully clear that they can still carry it.
Dave, I don't know how channeled the flow is down that hill.
It's pretty challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to distribute it to 3 openings, or is it just going to overpower one and come over the road, not even hit the other 2?
The design is for a pretty good head wall with a concrete paver and whatnot to catch it
and bring it in. Yeah, okay.
So it should reduce the velocity and ferocity of the water coming down the hill.
Yeah.
To slow it before it goes across into the creek across Sunset.
Yeah, that storm last week was bad. If you go further down Sunset Hollow over to Valley Creek over in East Brantford, they had a really nice redesign of that bridge and they have a catch net in front of it, completely overpowered, logs and everything piled up against the bridge. That, you know, it was amazing. So on the bids here, do we?
Yep.
This is to John's question about the breadth of numbers that we see in the bids. Do you have the detailed breakdown between material costs that each one assumed, the labor costs? Are you able to say the difference between a $165,000 bid and a $360,000 bid is in materials or the estimated labor hours? Do you have that level of information?
Yeah, Carroll Engineering did a very, because of the variation in these bids, for example, I'm going to jump to the Pine Valley Circle just as an example. We are, as part of that project, there's a basin that now the township owns at the end of the project. Those amounts across those bids for the Pine Valley Circle job were relatively close. Now, we are seeing variations in materials costs and personnel costs between these bidders, where again, like we discussed earlier, they're not sure about 4 months from now if they're going to be able to get plastic pipe, what it's going to cost, where are they going to source it. So some of these higher bidders, and again, we're in that weird time period right now. A lot of these contractors are looking towards the end of the year, where they may already have tons of work, and they just did this as an exercise, just to get their estimators out there. So we do have a variation in bids, but Carroll Engineering reviewed these down to the penny, and again, it's materials cost, personnel cost, unknowns, inflation, everything else that's going on right now. That's why you see, across both projects, that's why you see this.
And this project, though, is designed to be done before the end of the year. It's supposed to get this in the fall, right?
Correct.
Do we know anything about road con?
Yeah, they're actually in the township. They're right up the street.
We done work with them before?
No,
they've never quoted. They've quoted jobs for us, mostly paving, but they've never been the low bid before.
Okay. And they have the capability to do this type of work, we're pretty sure.
Yeah, they're a heavy construction. Yeah.
they do a lot of culvert work for PennDOT.
Okay, so this is I won't say small, but it's certainly within that range of
yes.
wheelhouse. It's not a stretch for them in any way.
That's a bit.
You?
I'll make the motion.
You was made a motion, is there a second?
Actually,
set. Okay, so any other board questions? John, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Getting back to my other question about getting a cost estimate from the engineering company from Carroll. I'm just curious for this project here with Sunset Hollow, what did they estimate the cost would be for this project?
The original cost for the box culvert was $350,000.
right.
350?
Yes.
But that was for the box.
That was
We
for-
went- when we realized we
But
couldn't do
now
the
this
box,
is going to a three,
we knew we were gonna put the pipe in, we knew it was gonna be under the 350.
Right.
We did not get an updated cost reference.
And 350,000 is in the budget that was allocated for 2021. It's in the budget.
half that.
Yeah, well, when we made the switch, the budget was already done.
Yeah, exactly.
Understood.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is there any, this is a relatively simple project, like you said, it's just basically cutting the road open, putting something in its place, it's not talking about a whole lot of distance here.
Right.
Is there any great chance for there to be extras and, or unforeseen situations to occur that would arise like the Raiders Avenue job where you ran into rock? You know, could not anticipate that or difficult to do that. So is an additional extra associated with that. But in this situation here,
I wouldn't think in that area up there is pretty much shale. I really wouldn't think it hit hard rock, especially as shallow as we're gonna go. But,
we'll see.
yeah.
Any other board questions? So I had a motion and a second to approve the low bid for the Sunset Hollow Stormwater Construction Project and award the bid to Roadcon Inc. Are there any public questions or comments? Margie?
Hi, Conservation. So the recently completed Grubbs Mill project seems like it was less intense, or at least the distance, because it was truly just under Grubbs Mill. And wasn't that like 350 or 400,000?
That was a large project, yes, absolutely. And we actually downsized it because we couldn't do 100. We wanted to do a 100-year storm to get under the culvert, but that would have been $700,000-$800,000, so we reduced it down to a 25-year storm.
So this distance, though, is not only just through Sunset Hollow, it's also through a residence yard. So the distance of this pipe is twice as long
We're
as...
just putting pipe in.
Yeah,
We're
just
not
pipe.
putting a box culvert.
Right.
Box culvert, they had to tear out an existing pipe culvert.
Yeah.
They were dealing with pico wires, big cranes to set the box culvert. A lot more intense project.
A lot more costly than just putting pipe in the road.
Okay, I did notice that it is directly within the confines of FEMA floodplain. Like the FEMA floodplain crosses right where this new pipe's going to be laid.
Right.
Will that create any additional costs or
No,
issues?
not at all.
And then the plans, I think, also called for you have to obtain a residence right away. Has that been?
We did that several months ago.
Okay.
And they were very good to work with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Any other questions? Okay, ready to take a vote. All those in favor of approving the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed to the motion say nay. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Item number 6 on the agenda is discussion and possible approval of the Pine Valley Circle Amelia Lane Stormwater Project bid. Casey and Dave.
Yep. So we received 3 bids on the Pine Valley Circle. This is a much larger project, and I'm actually, let me just for your edification, I do have the plans available too if anybody wants me to project them. Okay, so on the screen is Pine Valley Circle. If you can see my cursor, it's Pine Valley Circle here. We have several homes here that have a 5-foot diameter pipe, old corrugated metal pipe, in their front yard. Due to utility conflicts, etc., that stormwater pipe could not be placed in the street. Down at the cul-de-sac here, the wooded area down here is the detention basin for the neighborhood. The township now owns that detention basin, and part of this project is rehabilitation. It's and Rick can join in here. It is not functioning. It's the water comes in, goes out. It's treed. It's got to be naturalized and brought up to 2021 standards for infiltration, et cetera. That is part of the project as well. That was about $32,000 of the low bid cost. Part of the project, again, is to replace this aged completely deteriorated concrete metal pipe in these, our neighbors' front yards here. And then also in this direction as well, there is pipe replacement in this area here. This is Amelia, and from here west is the pipe is in actually pretty good shape. However, it needs to be lined, but it's still in adequate enough shape that it can be lined. And you were talking about price differential. Speaking to Chris Peterson and Carol, this pipelining portion, there's no local companies that do this. They're all from out of state. That is a big driver of this cost. Is above the slightly above the estimate was this pipelining portion of it. Again, we don't want to dig up the street. Pipelining is the best way to go. It's just going to cost a little bit more money to do that, but less disruption. Inlet to inlet line instead of digging up the entire street, especially to dig up.
They do have to dig the crossings. So
Right.
the crossing, Emily, the cul-de-sac.
Right.
There's 2 inlets at the mouth of the road where it meets Amelia. That'll get opened up because the cost to line it, it's much cheaper and faster than just to dig up and replace it. You already have to dig 8 to 10 feet on both sides. You only have a small piece in the middle.
Okay.
It just doesn't make sense.
So it is cheaper to line it than to dig out the pipe and replace it?
Depends.
Depends.
Depends. All depends.
There's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
But in a case like that, you've already have to dig
Yeah, on
8
both
to
sides.
10 feet on both sides.
Mhm.
The road's only 30 feet. We have 20 feet dug up. It just makes sense to open dig across.
Yeah.
So what time is the pipe that's going to get lined over on Pine Valley?
18 to 24.
And how much loss of diameter do you get when you put that lining in?
You will lose some diameter, but you go from corrugated metal, which is a rough surface,
Yeah.
to a smooth
So you get a better
plastic,
flow.
so you get more flow.
Yeah. And knock on wood, that lining lasts forever.
Chemical engineering. Chemical engineering.
There you go.
Through the surface.
I had an 800 in SAT,
Not bad.
chemistry. Well, that's true.
So, that, you say the material for that is what's coming from out of state?
Correct. The material and the manpower to get that done. Right.
Well, the bids are all from PA, right?
Yes, they're all local companies, but it's outsourced and
That specialized crew would come in from out of state?
correct. They would be a subcontractor of the low bidder, or any of the bidders, actually.
And the low bidder is the company that did the work at Norwood?
Correct, AJ Jurek. Yep.
Yeah.
And as we saw the pictures today, Knollwood turned out.
Thank God we did it when we did.
Yeah, it would have been. We would have lost the road. Absolutely.
So this is in the budget as well?
Correct. Yes.
This is not so good news, though.
What is
Right.
the budget?
Yeah, what was the budget?
I think it was
621, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, 621 for this. So you're above budget by, you know.
Yeah, so between this project and the one we just approved, construction costs is pretty much close to the budget.
Yeah,
numbers.
we have about 20, 30,000 of. We're on the good side of it, but
Yeah.
it's very
We
close
gotta
to
do the work,
goal.
yeah. We don't
Yeah,
want
exactly, absolutely.
Issues might arise, particularly on this project.
Correct. Correct.
You,
I'm going to move approval of the jury.
the low bid.
I'll second.
John.
Are there any other board questions or comments about this proposed award of the construction bid? Okay, are there any public questions or comments? Margie?
Just an observation again. If you, I don't know if you can zoom in and just look at item numbers 1 and 2. On the low bid, the combined, just for tree removal and clearing and grubbing and erosion and sediment control, just those 2 line items for the low bid was $92,500. But I guess the higher bid, or one that we're not choosing, those same 2 line items is only $27,500. So, I mean, I don't know if you can go back and ask like the low bidder to sharpen their pencil. on-
We'd have to reject the bids.
Okay, but,
That's illegal.
so, we're looking at $60,000 of tree removal?
Can I answer that question?
Sure.
It is very common in construction bids, if there are unknown factors that you want to lose in an item, to pick something innocuous like clearing and grubbing and erosion sedimentation control.
Mobilization.
And mobilization, any of those lump sum items that are kind of very hazy and innocuous. And if you have uncertainties, that's where you put your dollars to cover your uncertainties. Some contractors do that, some contractors don't, but you can't necessarily go on a line item like that and say, are they actually going to do $60,000 worth of clearing and grubbing? Because they could very well have some other costs woven into that. It's very commonly done.
And just because they're high in that one, when you look further down, they are the
They're lower in others.
The rest of theirs are low.
Yeah, by almost $200,000 total. So.
This year's paving project, Alan Myers, what?
Yeah.
They bid $1 a ton in place for base repair. Everybody else was $65, $70 a ton. They bid $1 a ton. They wanted the work. They rolled the dice. There wasn't going to be a lot of base repair.
Yep.
And they won the bid because of that.
Okay, and then just back to the overview, which was very helpful. I like seeing that map. So the stormwater basin did look like it is essentially very treed.
Yes, all treed, yeah.
So are all those trees for stormwater purposes going to be removed? It seems counterintuitive.
No, absolutely.
No. Most of the trees within the basin are going to be removed. You don't need to remove the trees that are outside of the berm or outside of the basin area itself. It's actually better to have some shade and some cover to reduce the water temperature. But you have to remove the trees that have the ability to compromise the structural integrity of the basin. So those are the ones that are going to be removed. Plus there's some bamboo in there that needs to be removed as well. The issue with this basin is we've only owned it for, what, a year or two?
Yeah.
This was an orphan parcel for like 30 years or so. It was supposed to have been combined with one of the residential properties, and somehow the county didn't do that. They kept it a separate parcel. And nobody paid taxes on it because nobody owned it, and nobody did anything with it for years and years. Finally went to sheriff's sale. Some person who did not do their homework bought it at sheriff's sale thinking they were going to build a house on it, even though it was landlocked and had a detention basin on it. That didn't happen. He defaulted. We wound up getting the property, and nobody's touched that basin since it was built about 40 years ago. So we're inheriting what would now be considered a poorly designed basin, because that's the way they were designed 40 years ago. Plus it's had zero maintenance. So hence the need to fix it.
So a couple of questions, Rick. So if we own it, are we getting easements to get in there? What's the process?
We actually have a sanitary sewer easement that gives us access to the property, even though it's landlocked. So,
Sufficient to do the work that's required?
Yeah, we lucked out on that one.
Yep.
Okay, and then, I probably know the answer to this, by upgrading that basin, since it was already existing, we don't get any credits towards our PRP?
Not necessarily. We might, we designed it to current standards for infiltration and detention, and we can submit it to DEP for credit. Whether we'll get it or not is always questionable, but I think we have a pretty good shot at getting some PRP credit for it.
Same order of magnitude credit as we'll get for the already approved DEP projects that we're planning on doing starting next year?
Probably not, because those projects were anticipated as TMDL projects, which have greater levels of removal efficiency. The watershed that this is in is going to be a PRP project, which is only about a 10% removal, but it still should give us some credit.
Okay.
And just following up from Sean's question there about the easements, I believe there's 4 properties along Pine Valley Circle there that are really going to be tremendously impacted by this project, basically going across the front of their lawns, cutting across their driveways. Can you explain a little bit about what arrangement the township is making with these folks as far as their driveways are concerned, restoring them?
Yeah, as part of the staff met with our solicitor and engineer, and the best way to deal with that since we're going to be transversing their driveway and creating a patch in the middle of the driveway, some people just had them paved. They have a lot of settlement issues down there because of these stormwater issues, which we will hopefully solve. We offered each of those homeowners, anybody that we cut across their driveway, to essentially repave their driveway from their garage all the way out to the street. And everybody was overjoyed to hear that, because we don't want to leave a product behind that, somebody just pave their driveway over and come in and create a patch. It looks silly and it's not good neighborly, so that's part of the design and part of the project. Sure.
Okay, last chance for any questions. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to award the bid for the Pine Valley and Amelia Drive Storm Sewer Rehabilitation Project to A.J. Jurick in the amount of $772,750. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passes 4-0.
Good. Thank you.
Item number 7 on the agenda, approval of the bills to be paid for the general fund, the sewer revenue fund, the waste and recycling fund, and the capital reserve fund. I have a motion to pay the bill. Have a second? Have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ashley. Are there any questions or comments on the bills to be paid? Okay, so I had a question relative to the, I think I know what it is, the reimbursement for background check with the summer counselors.
Correct. Those are the summer counselors. Obviously, they come into contact with children in our program. They have to pass a series of background checks, FBI, state police. We investigated trying to do that, not in-house. We can't do it ourselves, but directly, paying. There's third-party vendors that do it. It just became too onerous for us to do all those background checks and pay for them. So the individual counselors go and they submit their reimbursement to us. Simple.
Thank you.
Yep.
Does the board have any questions or comments on the bills? Are there any public comments or questions on the bills to be paid? All those in favor of approval to pay the bills say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Final agenda item tonight is agenda item number 8, public comment. Are there any public comments or questions about any items that they've not had a chance to ask or that you would like to bring up for the board's attention? Hang on, Margie. Bill.
Phil Bagley, I just want to find out where do we stand on this handicap parking space on Court Circle?
Nothing has changed on that. It's completely tabled. The board has no action in place on it. It will stay that way unless someone brings it to the attention of the board again.
Thank you.
Margie?
This is an old issue, but I'm going to ask the township for their assistance, especially since Aqua has come out with a notice that they're going to request from the PUC, or they have another rate increase. A little background, the township or Westchester area sold their water system to Aqua, I don't know how many years ago, but there is a written agreement between Aqua and the township that Aqua won't provide to me and the township won't provide to me. And that would outline exactly what Aqua is what services they're supposed to provide, not just water service, but also fire hydrant service. Section 1304, I believe it's under PUC, discrimination in rates, says that no public utility shall, as to rates, make or grant any unreasonable preference or advantage to any person, corporation, or municipal corporation, or subject any person, corporation, or municipal corporation to any unreasonable prejudice or disadvantage. Now, as you know, the township has 410 fire hydrants that they cover the rental fee on, but in just recent years, the township has now neglected to pay for about 10 or 15 fire hydrants. I happen to live on a street where the township, after paying my hydrant fees, has now declined to pay the hydrant fees. we pay in our homeowners, little 12 homeowners association, twice the fee for fire hydrant rental than Aqua charges the township. So I'm asking of the township to kindly provide me with the original agreement between Aqua and the township, and also ask for your assistance in ensuring that those very few homeowners that the township has decided not to pay the hydrant fees on aren't charged double the rate. That if we're going to have to pay those fees separately, that you help ensure equality in the rates. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Margie. I'm not sure I agree with your characterization of the issue. I certainly don't know if there's an agreement that we have with Aqua that's not available. Yeah, we're not aware of it. Our solicitor is not with us tonight. We've previously addressed this multiple times with you. We believe our ordinance is very clear that fire hydrants on private roads, maintenance fee is not paid for by the township. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Your ordinance
I've
is...
answered your question. If you have a different subject, please ask it.
I've asked for a legal opinion. I believe
We
your
gave you a legal opinion several years ago.
I believe your ordinance is in conflict
I
with
know you do,
second-class
and we've had enough
township.
of this subject. We've raised this several times, and we've answered it. Do you have a separate question?
Right. Why does the township allow fraudulent minutes to exist? Why won't you direct the township manager to correct a misstatement that he put in the minutes and quoted me as saying I wanted the township...
You're talking about minutes that were 2017, I believe. We've already addressed this subject with you. This board will take no action on any previous minutes. Certainly.
Will you take action on the
unless the
township
supervisor told
manager
me
that
otherwise.
fraudulently...
That is not fraudulent. It was documented. We've already discussed it with you. We asked you to consider a proposal. You said no. The matter is closed. Is there any other public comments or questions? Do you have another question, Margie?
Yes, the other day I came in on a Friday at about 2:45, and there weren't any cars in the parking lot. I came into the township building, the lights were off. The only person here was Mr. Lalonde. He sent me back out to my car because I didn't have a mask on. I came back in and engaged in a conversation with him, but he did not put his mask on, but required me to wear a mask. So I'm wondering why all the township employees are allowed to take half days on Fridays before 3-day holidays. Do they take half-day vacation days for that? Did the board approve that all the township employees that work Fridays to work half-days on Fridays before 3-day holidays? Is the board aware of the decision by the township manager to allow that?
So I would say, management has the approval of people taking vacation within a vacation policy that the township has. The board doesn't get involved in every particular decision about when somebody takes a vacation day. Personally, I used to take vacation days on Fridays all the time when I worked, so it's not unusual, I think, particularly in the summer. Casey, is there any particular vacation policy the board should be aware of that you're using or applying differently?
No, I'm just following precedent of probably 40 years. We leave the employees go. I think I let them go 4 hours early on Friday. The lights were not off, Margie, and I did ask you to put a mask on. I will admit to that. You came in and asked for a document, and within 15 seconds I emailed it to you, so I hope you received that. It's been past precedent, and it's a little tiny perk to our employees. We had maybe on Friday, we had a bunch of employees who took vacation. I think we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We had 5 employees in the building plus me, so 6. I didn't receive a phone call after, I was here till 5 o'clock. I didn't receive a phone call after 3 o'clock. No one came in the building after you from 2:30 on. It was an extremely quiet afternoon.
Okay, so does the board have any questions for Casey about vacation policy?
My point is that they weren't taking vacation days. He just gives them, he lets them go early at noon every 3-day holiday for Friday. And they get paid for work that are not here today.
Well, thank you for being here and checking up on that. Any other questions?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Who's made a motion to adjourn for a second? Thank you, Ashley. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I can email a copy of that to you if you like.
Oh, that was great.
Sure.